that the mountains might flow down at thy presence, as when melting fire burneth the fire, cause the waters to boil, to make thy name known to thine adversaries, that the nations may tremble at thy presence, when thou didst terrible things which we look not for. Thou camest down the mountains, flow down at thy presence. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for him that waiteth for him. Thou beatest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today our study in the book of Job. And let's pick it up where we left off here in chapter 16. We've read it before. We're going to get Job's reply here again. Then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye all. Shall vain words have an end? Or what emboldeneth thee that thou answerest? I also could speak as ye do, if your soul were in my soul's stead. I could heap up words against you, and shake mine head at you, but I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the moving of my lips should assuage. Yeah, assuage. I think that's how we say it in English. I bet it's both. And the moving of my lips should assuage your grief. Though I speak, my grief is not assuaged. And though I forbear, what am I eased? But now he hath made me weary. Thou hast made me desolate, all my company. Thou hast made desolate all my company, and thou hast filled me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me. And my leanness rising up in me beareth witness to my face. He teareth me with his wrath, who hateth me. He gnasheth upon me with his teeth. Mine enemy sharpeneth his eyes upon me. They have gaped upon me with their mouth. They have smitten me upon the cheek reproachfully. They have gathered themselves together against me. God hath delivered me to the ungodly, and turned me over into the hands of the wicked. I was at ease, but he hath broken me asunder. He hath also taken me by my neck, and shaken me to pieces, and set me up for his mark. His archers compass me round about. He cleaveth my reins asunder, and doth not spare. He poureth out my gall upon the ground. He breaketh me with the breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant. I have sewed sackcloth upon my skin, and defiled my horn in the dust. My face is foul with weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death. Not for any injustice in mine hands. Also my prayer is pure. O earth, cover not thou my blood, and let my cry have no place. Also now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and my record is on high. My friends scorn me, but mine eye poureth out tears unto God. Oh, that one might plead for a man with God, as man pleadeth with his neighbor. When a few years are come, then I shall go the way whence I shall not return. My breath is corrupt. My days are extinct. The graves are ready for me. Are there not mockers with me? And doth not mine eye continue in their provocation? Lay down now. Put me in a surety with thee. Who is he that will strike hands with me? For thou hast hid their heart from understanding. Therefore shalt thou not exalt them. He that speaketh flattery to his friends, even the eyes of his children shall fail. He hath made me also a byword of the people, and aforetime I was a tabret. Mine eye also is dim by reason of sorrow, and all my members are as a shadow. Upright men shall be astonished at this, and the innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite. The righteous also shall hold on his way, and he that hath clean hands shall be stronger and stronger. But as for you all, do ye return, and come now? For I cannot find one wise man among you. My days are past. My purposes are broken off, even the thoughts of my heart. They change the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. If I wait, the grave is my house. I have made my bed in the darkness. I have said to corruption, Thou art my father. To the worm, Thou art my mother and my sister. And where is now my hope? As for my hope, who shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of the pit, whence our rest together is in the dust. What is Job's hope? I think it is the resurrection. It's the implication. His lack of faith is the most pointed little bit about it. And it's not a fault against him from God's perspective. He has no revelation. He has only a vague hope that the justice can be carried out beyond the grave through some sort of resurrection, that God just bring everyone back. I mean, we are made of dust. So again, the argument from, who was this, Eliphaz, the Temanite? He once again, he says, there's no way God doesn't let things like this happen to people, to his beloved. I mean, there are a lot of scriptures, and no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Every snare, all the purposes of the enemy will be confounded. Where's that no weapon? I want that scripture. I forgot which, no weapon. I want to know what the other half of it was. I think it's no weapon is the phraseology. There's 7 results for no weapon in the King James. I wonder if that's a proper quotation. Oh, no, of course there is. Isaiah 54. And here we are. Verse 17, the last verse. I always like to go a little more context than that. Hold on here. And here's the thing. They'll take a verse like 17 in isolation. Like I'll read it now. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. Right? This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. Now, this right here, the servants of the Lord, this is their heritage. Again, you serve God. Cast thyself down. He shall give his angels charge concerning thee. Say, well, he quoted it wrong. Yeah, but you could still interpret it that way. I don't care how you quote it. Just like this. Look, nothing could hurt you. I mean, even Jesus, in that disputed passage at the end of Mark, some people don't think it belongs there. I don't have a problem with it. I don't see what's wrong with it. I think it's just because they just had about enough of Jesus and his metaphors. They don't like, all right, enough. Cut that part off. We don't want the part about the snakes and the poison. Because we want to take this book literally. We can't have those in there. You know what? Sometimes it is. Because you could go back and say, like, okay, in righteousness shalt thou be established. It's not just any old time, right? Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near thee. Standard kind of promises, though, but still, this is all true of Job. And all your children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your Lord. This is actually promissory. This is somewhat, I consider as a Christian a millennial type promise. You look at like 54:12 here with the stones mentioned, windows of agates, the gates of carbuncles. It does sound a lot like the description we see in Revelation. I mean, not exactly parallel, but similar kind of references to the richness of the construction of that great city which is to come. And I always take that as somewhat metaphorical because I don't think those things have any real value. The true value of a city is in the quality of the population. You can build all kinds of pretty buildings, but if the people who live in it do not appreciate and understand the value of what this civilization means, the prettiness of the building doesn't really mean anything. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake. So, promises are not to be taken as absolutely in all contexts, because it's not necessarily, and if you read it in context, you realize this is not some blanket promise given to all believers, but people often will take verses as though they are blanket promises to all believers. And in a sense, it does sort of call back to us. I mean, I do think they are promissory to us, and they are instructive to us, and they are for us, but you have to understand where you are as far as it's not always the case. And that can be also looking through the lens of God's salvation from death through the resurrection. Because it's because you understand Jesus, his whole attitude towards it is this, that fear not them that destroy the body. And if you don't think he believed that, look what he did. He lived his life as if he didn't fear them that could kill him. And he even did not fear being killed by them, though he did not fear it, but he did have an anticipation of it. He had a very human reaction. When you anticipate being tortured and stuff, that could, it's like when you're a kid, when you're going to get a shot, they tell you don't look because it doesn't really hurt. I mean, not much, especially if they do it nice and slow. These days, don't get the shot, kids. Okay? Go ahead and scream all you like. Excuse me. Anyways, so you have to take things in the proper context and understand, if I'm the servant of the Lord, yes, no weapon formed against me can prosper, because even if they kill me, I will rise from the dead. That is a incredible promise. But also, it's incredible in the sense it's hard to believe. But we must believe it to death, to the death. Listen, I think that's his hope is that there's some sort of, that like he says, my witnesses in heaven, I is given to men once to die and afterwards the judgment. He's like, I know that he liveth and he makes all things to live and breathe. Job knows what we know. There's this constant reaffirmation. Hey, I know the same things you do. Me too. I'm a man of gray hairs. I've been hanging around the Bible for a long time. I've been talking to God for a long time, listening to God, listening to other believers. Being mindful, especially of the Spirit. My number one instructor, the Spirit. Because honestly, you can't tell one teacher from another without the Spirit. We all need it. And I don't always think that I'm not necessarily the custom-made thing someone needs right in this instant, but then sometimes I am, I guess. That's just how it is. We all have differing gifts. So, let's look at these verses again. We're not that far into, we're 16 here. I've heard many such things. I've heard all the same things. I've heard all the things you're saying. God, the congregation of the hypocrites are desolate. The fire shall consume the tabernacles of bribery. I get it. We understand. Right now, God turned me over to the enemy. You understand? God turned me over to the enemy. Just like Jesus. If you don't think God can does this stuff, look at the Lord Jesus. What do you think he was praying about in Gethsemane? Is there some other way? Some other way, perhaps? If there be another way? Okay, no other way, not as I will, but as thou wilt. I mean, because like I said, I'm willing to do God's will, but I'm not really willing to go get tortured. You know what I mean? I'm not really willing to do that. I don't want to voluntarily get tortured. Though what I will voluntarily do is obey God and do his will. And if that includes torture, then I'll have to accept that, or let God down. I mean, that would be a bad thing to do. Though, you know, people have let him down before. The Apostle Peter, Thomas, Judas, you know, it gets close there, man. You know, think about all the mistakes the apostles made. Some are apparently worse than others. You know, I don't want to fall after the same example of unbelief. Though, you know, I think the Lord, I'm thankful that the Lord understands that I have a lot of reasons for unbelief. I'm way out from where he was walking the earth. And it's like, when the enemy is running around always trying to sow doubt in the hearts of men and to steal away the word from their hearts. And so there is, it's just like if it was possible for Thomas to doubt, okay? It doesn't, don't rail on your brother because they have difficulty. You know, I think it's funny though, because in Christianity, it's almost like the biggest taboo of all is to admit any doubt, which I think is hilarious because it's like, oh, you all have no doubts. Well, that's interesting. I think you're all dishonest people is what I really think. That's what I think when I hear people, no doubts. You're just dishonest. Okay, you're a liar. That's all I learned. But, you know, occasionally people do have gifts of faith where they have no doubts. I just think the fact that I never met believers who were willing to admit doubts, which is interesting. You know, because you want to have faith and doubt not. That's what Jesus said, if you have faith and doubt not. The Lord did me a great service in that I didn't have to show much faith for him to demonstrate to me the power that he has to respond to faith. And so I do believe. But just like Thomas, you know, hey, I stuck my finger in his wounds. That was like 20 years ago. I mean, come on. It's like it's pathetic. But, you know, it's the truth. Mankind is just like that. We are not all, and we all have different, we're constituted differently. Job knows what we know. That God is a revenger. That God will, you know, the wicked will pay for their wicked deeds. But people really like to see that happen on the earth. You know, what goes around comes around. We love a story where we see the bad guys get what they have coming, right? When the bad guys get what they have coming, everyone cheers at the end, right? When I'm trying to remember a couple of movies I remember where there was, I don't remember the movies, but where at the end the bad guy, you know, falls in the vat of whatever, and people like cheer, and because he was so despised by the audience that it actually brings on spontaneous cheering. Which is, whatever that is. That just means that it's an effective movie. It's moving people. But, you know, we like to see the bad guys get theirs. And we want to believe that that's how things work. And it is how they work. But God has appointed it that prior to the veil of death, you don't see that full justice come about. You know, we all got to die, and then just all those generations died saying, yep, there's going to be a judgment. And here we are at the end of history or whatever, you know, and we still haven't seen it. We still haven't seen that judgment, you know. That's why I say it's for since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they have since the foundation of the world. It's kind of, nothing's changed much, has it? It doesn't exactly, I mean, Satan seems like he's up to his old tricks, like the same old tricks. You know, it doesn't seem much different. The world we live in is constituted pretty much the same as it has been for thousands of years, as far as, you know, what I would consider like the supernatural. Like the devil making an incursion He's restrained. But sometimes the Lord allows him to do things. I like what he says, shall vain words have an end, or what emboldeneth thee that thou answer, whatever, that's just kind of rhetorical insulting there. It's like you're saying things that have no bearing. I know how annoying that is when people say things like, you this, you that, you this, you that, and like, I'm not, it's like someone coming to me and saying, what is it, you Christians all support Zionism and blah, 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 and accusing me of all this stuff, and of course I don't. So, and I'd be like, why are you accusing me of this thing that I don't have anything to do with? Or certainly that if I had any tacit, I look back at my old teaching. I always urge caution about what are they doing? You don't just blindly support anybody. That's obviously true. That's ridiculous. You don't respect persons like that. That's literally the respect of persons. Oh, he's a Jew, so give him a pass. Or to be the opposite, oh, he's a Jew, he's terrible. We assume that they're bad people because, no, you don't assume someone's a good person because of their immutable characteristics. Assume they're a bad person either. Every man should be judged according to his works. By their fruits you will know them. Very simple. You don't judge people by the things they say in this and that, though that can be somewhat instructive. You ought to listen to what they say and then judge it against what they do, right? There you go. It's good to listen, and then it's good to speak, but to follow through on your words. Like Jesus said, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. Don't be a dishonest person in life. There's nothing, no one has ever told me, oh, I'm so like upset when you talk about doubts. It upsets me because, it'd be more likely people are going to say something like that's refreshing. Because it's honest. And that's all that really matters to me. It's like, I'm not going to, if I lie to men, then I don't fear God or something. I don't know what's wrong with me. I fear men more than God, so I lie to them. I don't think so. I could say the same things you say. Oh yeah, if your soul was in my soul's stead, if you were in my position, you'll walk a mile in another man's shoes, so to speak, right? I could heap up words against you and shake my head. Oh, it's so easy from your position to be like, well, it's like bad things happen to bad people. FAFO, fool around and find out. Right? God is not, God, he punishes those hypocrites. People who act, people who are giving bribes under the table. But he's saying, no, I would strengthen you with my mouth. Like Job, you'll get through this. It's like if and the wisdom was not entirely with them, but it has to be to some degree. That's why this book is written. The wisdom was there to know. That's why Job is the character of the book, because Job is the one who says, hey, you know what? When people are afflicted, you should comfort them first, rather than blaming them. Because a lot of the afflictions of this world are way out of proportion to the sins that most people commit. I mean, that many people, that's not most, your average person, their sins, are not necessarily, like I said, they're not necessarily murder, grand theft, ruining people's lives, though there are people with those sins on their character, right? Most people, your sins are small and personal. And many of us have reconciled to God. I don't have any like rapes in my past. It's like I have sins that I'm ashamed of. I've talked about and such. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, yeah, is there any human wreckage of all the people I harmed? No. It's like pretty mediocre sinner. Nothing to brag about. Or I was the greatest sinner of all time. No. And it's like, and and I can, even though I'm not the greatest sinner of all time, I can suffer way beyond anything I've ever done in my life to deserve it. I mean, Jesus did. I'm not better than him. Well, I'm too good to suffer? I don't think so. And that's part of what Job's message is, the message of the book, is that, Job is good. He's really good, but he's not too good to suffer. And no one is. And that's the important thing. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that doesn't, it's like, I told I remember, most of the deficits in my love are in, it's not that I don't love completely, it's just that I'm not a good enough person to love perfectly. Something that I have to put on through the Spirit of Christ, something that has to be indoctrinated into me, or so that it becomes something real as opposed to. I mean, it's good to they say fake it till you make it. It's good to do your best. The Lord, when we try to do things that are against our sinful nature, the Lord looks on that as a very good thing. When you are in good faith, attempting to obey Him, and to bring yourself into alignment with His perfect example. Because that's what He admonished us to do, to be perfect as God Himself is perfect. It doesn't matter that that's beyond your reach. You always reach for the highest thing. It makes sense. You don't aim low, you aim high. I don't actually expect to be as perfect as God, but, that's the point. You still got to know what the goal is, what it's supposed to look like. So when people suffer, definitely don't be a pile-on. Sometimes people do suffer because of their sins, like I said, sometimes there's direct consequences. Someone's suffering, they've caused their suffering, like you're doing it to yourself. A lot of suffering in life is self-inflicted, to tell you the truth, right? I mean, we know this. We afflict ourselves. Or often, sometimes we afflict ourselves because, we have to live with the consequences of our own mistakes. That's certainly my life. When I think about why do I suffer financially, I was like, because I make financial mistakes. I don't think it's like, oh, God's after me. Though He might be. I don't want Paul to get rich. That's fine. I'm not trying to get rich. But, when we pour out our hearts to, people pour out their hearts and they want their grief to be assuaged or assuaged. I think assuaged. And what does that mean? Well, let's look up the Hebrew word instead of guessing at it. The English to me sounds, for some reason, it makes me think of like the idea of swaddling clothes, like to bandage up something. That's what assuage sounds like to me, the English. We may look at that because I do get curious about the origin of English words. But let's first look at the Hebrew words so we know if we even have a correct translation. I'll change my version of the Bible to Strong's King James Version. And let's see. Assuage. Chasak to... and it means to assuage means to hold back, right? There's nothing to swaddling, but I don't know. Like I said, it's just as I was sitting there, the word association of just the sounds. To withhold, refrain, to spare, to keep back. Like He assuaged all fears of a new blah, blah, blah coming, a new pandemic. To sort of, I think in English means something more than just to restrain, though. Now I'm curious. Interesting. So, where's the Strong's? All down here. Oh, look, they spell it. Is that how they spell it? Assuage. I'm not allowed to just grab it. There we go. Oh, assuage. To make an unpleasant feeling less intense. To make something less intense. To de-intensify. Feelings, specifically. Or to satisfy an appetite or desire. To like satisfy. My nose just started itching really hard. Oh, I should have hit the mute button, but didn't have time. Very, very fascinating. Okay. Back to the text. So then, put someone, to de-intensify their emotions, their sadness. To put a bright side on it, not to come in and condemn. Especially a lot of things like, it's not, I would hope, the thing is, like I said, you'd think this would be extinct. This tendency to see people's misfortune as some kind of wrath from God. Like if bad things are happening, God's against you. If good things are happening, and I've been in church like that, where if something bad started coming in someone's life, they were looking at it like that person, God's doing something to them for a reason. But here's the thing, not always. And because that is the case, but I'm like, how do you know? And here's the thing, how do you know? Well, I always feel the most peace when I know I'm doing His will. When I do His will, I feel the most peace because I don't have as many doubts like maybe He's trying to get my attention. Job doesn't have that doubt. He doesn't feel like, oh, maybe God's trying to get my attention for that secret sin. But when you have a secret sin, sometimes you think, well, maybe God's trying to get my attention. That your secret sin is not so secret, right? But nope. Not so. And thou hast filled me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me, and my leanness rising up in me beareth witness to my face. Oh, and though I forbear. To forbear is to refrain. If they will hear or whether they will forbear is like a good opposite. Like when Ezekiel, the Lord says, you will go to them whether they will hear or whether they will forbear. Forbear to hear, and then decide not to hear. And so he's saying, and what does it mean here? Well, forbear to speak. Though I speak, my grief is not assuaged. Whatever. And though I forbear to speak, what am I eased? I mean, whether I speak or not, it doesn't do me any good. If I explain myself to you, my grief is not lessened, and if I don't say anything, nothing gets eased. I don't even get it off my chest. Because sometimes it feels good just to say so, just to tell them you guys are rotten counselors, okay? I mean, it probably does feel good a little bit to say you guys are terrible. The world's worst comforters. Now He hath made me weary. Thou hast made me desolate in all my company. And thou hast filled me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me. So He hath made me weary, desolate in all my... Let's see what another translation has for verse 7. Because that just seems like company. What does it mean by company? Okay, so wrinkled. Yeah, see, the wrinkled part, according to the NIV, they have it as shriveled up. And that's the same thing. Wrinkled and shriveled up are the same visual thing. So, and obviously, maybe in this translation, shriveled up is a little better. Because it's sort of like saying, instead of this nice fat fruit, right, I'm become like this shriveled thing. All all the sweetness sucked out of it, or just like a wrinkled old person, looking dry and all that. I don't mean to. My dad's a wrinkled old man. I don't mean any negativity, but as far as like as life winds down, we become more shriveled up, just like fruit. My godness rises up and testifies against me. Yeah, so surely, God, you have worn me out. You have devastated my entire household. You have shriveled me up. It has become a witness. My godness rises up and testifies against me. It's interesting, they have God there. But when I look at the King James, it says, He hath made me weary. Thou hast made desolate all my company, all my household. Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah. Because his company was not just, and it doesn't mean company like business, but the company, like the company of people about us, like that sort of thing. All my companions. Because remember, he had his flocks and his herds and his family, and all these things were destroyed. And I alone am escaped to tell you, And all this, all these negative things that happen, they sort of make it look like, well, you look guilty. But all they testify to is what he's saying is that God is after me. But it doesn't say God here at all. It just says He. He. And I as I read it, I was thinking, I felt like a transition almost from God to Satan. Because mine enemy sharpeneth his eyes upon me. Now that's not really God. God is not your enemy. And to call him that, and I wanted to look that up because I was like, okay, my enemy, yeah, strong. Yeah, this is basically, I think this is basically the root of Satan. Well, because the name Satan does mean the enemy. Well, in fact, let me see. I could actually probably trace it down right here in Job. Because it would have said Satan came among them, right, in chapter 1. So let's go back and look at that real quick. Didn't look at Satan's name. Oh. There we go. Job 1, Paul. There we go. Satan came. It's very different, actually. I wonder if it comes from a similar root, though. It means an opponent, Satan, the archenemy of God, of good. I'm sorry, it says good there. Let's see, word origin. Because it means the same thing. And that's the thing. Even though if that word is not Satan or related to it per se, but just another word for adversary, enemy, opponent, isn't that close enough to call God the same thing as Satan? I mean, like the same kind of role. You call him the superhuman adversary of God. For some reason, I just suddenly imagine Satan like all buffed out in his red suit. From Satan. There we go. And where does Satan come from? Denominative from Satan. Satan. And this comes from uncertain derivation. Okay. So it's a different word, but same idea, which I find interesting. Tsar. Adversary, enemy. It also means distress, trouble, tight place, pebble, an opponent. To bind or be narrow. The one who puts into narrow places, into binding places, denotes an adversary and enemy, often used to describe someone who causes distress or trouble. It can also refer to the state of being in distress or experiencing hardship. The term is frequently used in the context of conflict. And here it goes even into that, the enemy spiritually. And God is the one who's supposed to deliver us from the enemy, right? Not the one who is delivering us to, it says, deliver us from evil in the Lord's Prayer, right? So, like I said, I feel like it's almost getting at the fact that, like, Job's saying God is he doesn't think God is actually doing it to him, is what I say, because he knows God isn't doing it to him. Some enemy, the Sabaeans fell upon him, right? And the wind blew, right? And that's sort of like, well, did God make that happen? He allowed it to happen. I think Job understands that in a certain sense. He knows that, because here's the thing. God could protect him. God has been protecting him. There are all kinds of scriptures. God will protect you. We went to that one from Isaiah. No weapon formed against you will prosper. Right? Every tongue that rises against you, you will condemn. But for the time being, sometimes the enemy seems to have his way. Just like in the book of Revelation, it's the same story. The beast that comes out of the bottomless pit makes war against the witnesses of God and overcomes them and kills them. And he looks like he wins. Looks like he wins. Everybody starts celebrating. Put on a nice 3-day bash. God has made him weary. He has desolated him. Filled him with, made him look all shriveled up. I mean, his life, I think it's just a metaphor for his life. The leanness, all the fatness of his life is gone. Everyone can just see all the bad things that happen to him. I mean, why would God let such bad things happen to Job, who served God so faithfully? It's not a good example. That's something I pray. Lord, don't let me be consumed, lest the enemy should say, because there's stuff like that in the scriptures. You don't want, they pray to God and they say, the enemy will say, where is their God? Right? The enemy will say, they said that about Jesus. On a certain level, God doesn't care. He doesn't. He doesn't care that they go, where's God? Where's God? He's waiting for the end. It's really funny when it comes. It's the punchline is amazing. On these people who think they can just get away with things and who live their lives on earth in defiance of the white throne. They're going to get what they got coming. They're going to get what they got coming. Everyone will. We're all going to be treated at the worst fairly. That's the worst thing that could happen to you, is that God would be just fair. Just pay us what you owe us, Lord. Yeah, I don't want fair treatment. I want unfair treatment. I want favorable treatment. I want grace to be poured out. It has been. That's the beautiful thing. We don't have to stand on works of righteousness which we have done, but rather on his righteousness. He teareth me in his wrath, who hateth me. God doesn't hate him. I don't think Job even thinks that, really. Like I said, I think that mine enemy, he knows he has an enemy. Because otherwise, look at the book of Job has Satan in it. So Job understands there's a Satan. There is an enemy. There is an enemy. Men heed the enemy. The men who live by Satan, by his ways. Get what you can. Take what you can. Live in pleasure. Get what you can while you can. And don't worry about the judgment. He teareth me in his wrath, who hateth me. He gnasheth upon me with his teeth. Mine enemy sharpeneth his eyes upon me. I like that phrase. He sharpens his eyes upon me. It's like You know, you sharpen a knife, you take a stone and you run the knife over that stone again and again and again and again and again, right? And he's saying his eyes just running over. He's got his eyes on me, man. Have you seen my servant Job? It doesn't matter that Satan's doing it, because God is allowing it. Satan can't do a thing to you without God allowing it. Especially if you're a believer. Especially if you're a believer. Because there's some degree to which it seems the scriptures indicate that, yes, Satan already has power over the world. So we are his children. Until we become adopted as children of God, we belong to the devil. You can tell because watch how people behave. Look at their fruits. Their fruits demonstrate who they belong to and who they serve. Whoever you yield your members to obey, that's who your master is. You know, it's kind of easy to tell. The one you listen to. Turns me with his wrath. Those are obviously very vivid word pictures for the idea of being eaten up by a vicious animal. Satan goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. You know, Paul may very well have had this in mind. They have gaped upon me with their mouth. Is this God? No. Again, like it says, I do think this really makes me think of Jesus. They stare at me, they've smitten me upon the cheek. They did. They gather themselves together against me. Jesus was in the same situation. As I said, did Job really happen? It happens all the time. And it even happened to our Lord. God hath delivered me to the ungodly. That's his enemy. Job's not the enemy of God. He's the enemy of the ungodly. And God has allowed the ungodly to have the upper hand over him. God delivered me to the ungodly, just as he delivered Jesus to the ungodly. I mean, we really see a sharp comparison with Christ there. I was at ease, but he hath broken me asunder. He hath also taken me by my neck and shaken me to pieces, and set me up for his mark. Set me up like a target. That means target. Using me for target practice. And it just means that, I thought everything was fine. That's why he wasn't complacent. No, God doesn't accuse him of complacency. And in fact, we see in his behavior, no, he wasn't complacent. He was very attentive to all things that would concern God in a man. He was very much on top of things. He was not complacent. He was at ease in the sense of, because, if you do the things God expects of you and you've done those things and you know it, then you need only pray that if there be things you're blind about, that they would be revealed to you. That's something you can add to your prayer in that case. But once you've done that, you have every right to feel at peace with God. Because Jesus has paid for all your sins and you're doing pretty much what God wants you to do. Why wouldn't you feel at ease? Things are good between me and God. Right? The peace of God which passes understanding. There's a degree to which God does not, there is a degree to which it is good to be enlivened with the energy that comes from a sense of urgency. The things have to be done, fixed, whatever it happens to be. But there's also a kind of energy, or there's a negative side to that. We become fixated on doubt and negativity. So, we want to be at ease because we have a good reason to think there is peace between us and God. And thankfully, through Jesus Christ, we do have that. But we have to remember we can provoke Christ. We can tempt him. And the main thing is don't be awful to other people. That's like the first and simplest way to start. Don't be awful to other people. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. He takes it actually personally. When you're awful to people, it's like you're awful to him. You know? And I haven't always been perfect. But it's a good thing. Be kind to your fellow human beings. We all have it pretty rough. Okay? Shook me by the neck. I mean, it makes me always think like a cartoon thing, like a guy grabbing by the neck and shaking, and then put up on the post to shoot at. I mean, that's just such a word picture. His archers compass me about. He cleaveth my reins asunder, and doth not spare. He poureth out my gall upon the ground. The reins and the heart. These are the things like the organs of the body that they would use linguistically to talk about essential aspects of personality and life and mental function. The reins, the kidneys were responsible for certain things. I'm not positive exactly. I mostly understand this from reading the context. It's always obvious that that's the thing. It's like, I, the Lord, try the reins. I try the hearts. The heart is deceitful above all things. They thought the heart was the brain. It doesn't matter that's how their language was. Their language. It's not some sort of decision. It's like, no. The kidney, they just had these things were referred to as their inner parts. The belly, the kidneys, the heart. They knew they were significant, and they are. They just didn't understand their function. But they assigned to it other functions. Like, reins, literally, I always think of it since it's kidneys and they translate it reins because it always seems to have something to do with the controlling nature of human, controlling us. And, I mean, I was like, kidneys kind of do control us a bit. I mean, if you got to go, you got to go. But I don't think that's properly understanding it. Let's look it up real quick here. I believe it's kidneys, My reins. Yep, kilia, a kidney. And that's all we get. Kilia. Sounds like he'll kill you, but it's kidneys. And actually, kilia, kidneys, looks close. And that's also the mind, right? A kidney or the mind. But not the brain, the mind. But a certain aspect. Yeah, which also means kidneys and is used metaphorically in a similar way. Which are considered the seat of emotion, affection, and moral character. The term is often used metaphorically to describe the innermost thoughts and feelings of a person. In a literal sense, it refers to the physical organ, which was significant in the sacrificial system of ancient Israel. Yeah, so they were thought, in the ancient Near East, the kidneys were thought to be the center of a person's emotional and moral life. So, yeah, guiding. Your guiding principles, your kidneys, the moral and the emotional, as a sort of a guide in life. Head, heart. We used to say a head, heart type thing. It's like those kind of issues. The reins. I always liked reins because it does literally kind of mean like that. It's the controlling aspect, your moral compass, so to speak. I mean, it even has compass in the same verse. I just noticed that. But anyways, obviously they wouldn't have the idea of a moral compass like we do today. But it does it's more like it points out the way you go. But cleaving my reins asunder, what is that? It's like saying like just the internal wreckage that occurs when you're guiding your life and you think you're doing it right. And then suddenly, boom, everything just comes apart at the seams. And gall, my gall, water of gall to drink. And I didn't know that. I know we have bile. So gall, the gallbladder, right? And gall, I believe, I don't remember what they thought gall was. Like, as far, because again, that's the important thing. What did they think? It doesn't matter if it was scientifically accurate. It's not the point. The point is, poureth out my gall upon the ground. Does he mean that literally? No, he doesn't. Obviously, Job hasn't had a knife stuck in him. Maybe he's talking about those oozing pustules, actually. So maybe it literally is true. But from the word marar, to be bitter, refers to gall or bitterness used in the New Testament to describe the bitterness of sin or suffering. And again, the gall comes out from the idea of suffering or bitterness. And so when he talks about his gall being poured out, it's like my suffering is being poured out. All the internal, it's like, imagine if like you were suffering and then all your suffering came out of your pores and your mouth and your nose in this black liquid, and that was gall. that's kind of what he's describing. Is like, like it's all just coming out. I'm just, excuse me. Bitterness was often associated with suffering and hardship. The term gall was a bitter substance, sometimes used to describe the bile or poison of serpents. Bitterness was also a common metaphor for the trials and tribulations faced by the Israelites. Yeah. So he's just referring to his suffering. My suffering is sort of like poured out on the ground. It's just all, like it's just on the ground, poured out for everyone to see. I think the idea of pouring out is definitely like a sort of revelation. He shows how I'm definitely afflicted. God is allowing his archers, the fiery darts of the wicked. He breaketh me with the breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant. I'm being trampled by a giant. He breaks me. I've sewed sackcloth upon my skin and defiled my horn in the dust. What does that mean? Well, I said horn. Usually, the horn of the righteous shall be high. That kind of idea. The horn is symbolic of the power of the animal that it's associated with, and thus also its strength, and also a man. It's sort of like when your horn. It indicates the idea of prosperity and victory. When your horn is raised up. But when your horn is down, defiled, down in the dust, and he says defiled. Everything, because horn symbolizes those things which, it also symbolizes, like glory. Like Moses had those horns on his head, which I believe it refers to some sort of emanation of brightness. Not horns, but like rays of light. He uses the same idea in the book of Habakkuk. It says, he had horns in his hand. And when I translated that for a song, he had emanations from his hand. He had light, emanations of light coming out of his hand. Indicating power. There was the hiding of it. That's where his power was hidden, in this light, in these horns. So horns are a sign of strength and power and prestige. Just like when a deer has a big rack of antlers, it sort of says something about him. And when you have the horn, represents that also to the ancient Israelites in that sense poetically. And so also there were horns on the altar and such things. And so his horn being in the dust. Horns are supposed to be high. They're not supposed to be defiled down in the dust. But, when you go into mourning, we put on sackcloth. In the ancient world, that's what they put on sackcloth. And they would sit in sackcloth and ashes down in the dust. And defiling his horn means, whatever I had to glory in. Because the horn is a symbol of glory also. I was getting at that. But, horn is, it is a good approximation of glory, because it's the idea of like this thing that comes off. And like if you think about horns of light from the sun, the beams of light, those are described also as horns. That's what I think. So the idea of my power is all reduced. My power is down in the dust. As far as a man, my strength, all the things he thought. Because he was a prosperous man. He did very well for himself. He had all these sons, and, all these things, but all All his strength is now brought down to nothing. My face is foul with weeping, all those tears and boogers, all that stuff, weeping and snot, and it's, hey, sometimes, life, things happen and it's hard. And my eyelids is a shadow of death, he feels so down that, and you can see it on him, the like he's about finished. Not for any injustice in mine hands. Also, my prayer is pure. Nope. This all has happened to me, but it's not for any injustice from what I've done. No. Also, my prayer is pure. How can my prayer be impure? Well, like I said, I think that, like, praying to God for the wrong things, is that impure? I don't know. Is there a wrong thing to pray to God for? I tend not to think like that. As far as, like, while I think there are better ways to pray than other ways, maybe some, I try to pray in faith. But sometimes you pray in doubt. Sometimes you pray from all kinds of different. In my experience, God is not. He understands our frame. He understands our weaknesses. He does not despise us for those small weaknesses of our flesh and all that stuff, those type of things. But it's the things that we ought to know, things where we shouldn't, you shouldn't do that to your fellow man, because you should know that that's going beyond what is acceptable. O earth, cover not thou my blood. Don't cover my blood. Because the idea is that the earth, because when something bad happens and someone innocent dies, it's like in the book of Isaiah chapter 26, it says, the earth shall no more cover her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. The earth shall disclose her blood, and no more cover her slain. Because it's like, there's so many people slain. There's all kinds of innocent blood that's never been avenged. The earth has swallowed up so much death and injustice, right? And someday it's going to vomit it all back up. All right? It's all coming back up, and all that's going to be judged. But in the meantime, it's not obvious. And he's saying, earth, don't cover my blood. Which it means let it be a case. Let it come before God. Let my cry have no place to come to rest. Meaning, so it has to keep going. Let it have no place to. Here's where that goes. We file this over here under complaints we don't care about. Also now, behold, my witnesses in heaven, and my record is on high. God knows. My friends scorn me, but my eye poureth out tears unto God, that one might plead for him. Oh, that one might plead for a man with God, as a man pleadeth for his neighbor. He's like, I wish I could get into judgment. Most of the time, that's not a good thing, because people haven't. But what he's saying is, like, I want to talk to God, and I want to understand. And actually, that one might plead for a man with God, as a man pleadeth for his neighbor. I want an advocate, an intercessor. Jesus Christ is the intercessor between God and man. He sent his Spirit to also act as that comforting intercessor in his name. We have one that will plead on our behalf. It is him. So this is a good thing. We have the Son, the righteous Son, who suffered for us. But also remember, he is not a man to be trifled with or to be tempted. Don't tempt him. Oh, I can just do whatever. I can just do whatever, and it doesn't matter, because it'll be all right. Not so. Well, then one might plead for a man with God as man pleadeth for his neighbor. Oh, I wish that somehow there was someone who could advocate on my behalf. When a few years are come, then I shall go the way whence I shall not return. I'm going to die. And again, 17, like I said, I think he begins again, maybe not begin, but he goes on to talk about the grave. And ultimately, like I said, I see he keeps referring to it. Where is my hope? Who shall see it? Who shall see my hope? Because I think he looks at it as like this far off thing, like the resurrection of the dead. Yep. It's not going to, though it waits, it will come. It's not forever. Thank God. There will be an end. There will be a resolution. But until then, it can be very difficult to accept the difficulties of life, the realities of suffering. But it is wrong to blame God in the sense of to become bitter against God. But it is not wrong to understand that God allows these things to happen to us. And so then, and like I said, the reason God allows these things, you don't know what's going on a lot with God and with what these other people are and human beings and all that stuff. We don't know a whole lot. All I know is, like I said, the chief responsibility I have is to relieve suffering in as much as I'm able to do it. When I see suffering, to assuage it. I think that's the obvious message that Job's trying to get across. When you see someone suffering, don't pile on. But be comforters, rather. As God has comforted you, you comfort others. As you've been blessed, bless others. Seems to me the most obvious thing in the world, the message. It's very clear. Anyways, thank you for joining me. Look forward to being back again. I'm not going to be back tomorrow. Being back again Monday. It'll be Monday. Tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, is not going to work out. I'm not. That could be wrong, but whatever. Fridays have become difficult again. I don't know. Tomorrow, Friday, we got stuff. Anyways, I look forward to being back again very soon to continue our study in Job. It'll be chapter 17. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
Oh, that thou wouldest rend the heavens, that thou wouldest come down, that the mountains might flow down at thy presence, as when the melting fire burneth, the fire causes the waters to boil, to make thy name known to thine adversaries, that the nations may tremble at thy presence, when thou didst terrible things which they looked not for, thou camest down the mountains, flow down at thy presence. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen